Hey everybody, this is Fringe Artist coming to you once again with another exciting video, the recent political developments around the world. So today we have an article from the Express website, express.co.uk, and the article reads as Russia has declared war and Putin already is winning and UK must fight back. So before I get into the article itself, my first reaction would be that I will burst out laughing at this headline, which is so farcical because it's been the West that has been quietly waging a war of, with proxy enemies against Russia and its allies, and so much for their anti-Russian tirade and the demonization of Russia that today Russia Today, one of the TV channels that the state broadcasting unit runs, is extremely successful in Europe, particularly in UK, and it is really taking away the audiences to a different narrative of the world. And it is this fight for the narrative that is currently going on. And UK, the European Union, they don't like the narrative that the Russian media is putting out there. They would rather control the narrative and talk about the one-sided goodness of the West and the evil Russians on the other side of the Baltic. So we all know what is really going on here. So let me get into the article right now. So they say that Russia has been waging a cold war on the West to destroy the shared value systems of Western countries. I mean, I can't just stop laughing at this sentence. I mean, what shared value systems are these people talking about? One of robbing countries of their resources, posing the ruling governments, and completely razing countries to the ground. I mean, what kind of value systems are we talking about here? I mean, there is none. The only value system that the West has is one of convenience and opportunity and opportunism. So this kind of falls flat, and the premise behind this article once again goes to show how the European media, the Western media in general, tries to construct the narrative in their favor. Moving on. So, we have the conservative MP saying that Russia has been adamant, we've been catapulted into a dangerous World War III scenario. I mean, with Alice cyber attacks, come on, give me a break. I mean, what are you talking about here? When you have invaded, I don't know, God knows how many countries over the last 15 years, starting from Afghanistan to Iraq to Syria, more recently Libya. This is ridiculous. They have been literally demolishing the Middle East. They have been going after their political opponents to the extent that the countries over there have to pay a very heavy price. And I'm pinching myself to think, why hasn't World War III already started over Syria? I mean, for the kind of provocation the West has indulged in, along with certain Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and even Israel, the extent to which Russia has been provoked into war is just unimaginable, and the kind of restraint that Russia has been observing all this while has been commendable. So what, folks, I'm showing you how these articles are written and how to really read these articles at the end of the day, right? If you don't know what is the narrative, then you will be just a bystander who will just benignly read this article not knowing what is the premise behind this. So I'll go on. So there have been certain cyber attacks which have been alleged to be done by Russia, and Mr. Seeley, who sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee, has also blamed Russia for the recent salisbury poisoning. Supposedly, one of the Russian spies or a double agent was poisoned to death by a couple of agents sent by Moscow. Now, this is almost sounding like a storyline from a James Bond movie or something of that sort. But even if that were to be true, and I do not discount the power of the KGB to silence people of their own, but tell me something honestly, which country out there doesn't operate spies? Are you saying the MI6 doesn't exist? They don't kill their own, they don't silence their own, they don't go and do anti-national activities in other countries? Of course they do, and they do it all the time. And to claim innocence and a higher moral ground one which does not exist. This is ridiculous. So let's move on. Speaking on the Today program, the Isle of Wight MP said, if you look up the definition of a Cold War, it's a war fought by proxy, information, and other means. So this is what I'm saying. I'm really sorry, Mr. MP, Mr. White. I'm really sorry. This has been the classical playbook of the West, of the CIA and the MI6, to really fight a war by proxy, using the media and controlling the narrative. Let's talk about that. This one-sided news reporting, I'm so sick and tired of the BBC giving me garbage. We all know what happened on 9/11, right? When Building 7 came crashing down, it went unreported. That speaks volumes for the narrative that the channel is peddling. I need not say more, right? Okay, let's move on. And they go on to say that, okay, Mr. Seeley claimed that the alleged attacks were an attempt from Russia to signal they don't like our value systems. You could argue more generally. I mean, more rhetoric without any evidence. And he also urged the government to pass new laws to stop foreign interference to UK domestic affairs. Um, yeah, you can legislate to hell, but it's not going to change anything. We need a Foreign Agent Representation Act. So they are literally trying to brand Russia today as a foreign agent for doing unbiased reporting on the ground. This is real. This is bullshit, and it has to be called out as such. So let's just take a listen from the video very briefly.
If anyone had any questions in their mind about Russian military involvement in the Salisbury attacks, this will put to rest those doubts, because here you have evidence of the Russian military launching a cyber attack on the very organisation, the international organisation in the Netherlands, set up to investigate those Novichok attacks.
So, very briefly, this is sounding very lame to me, because they could not come out with anything against Russia save for a cyber attack, right? Let us talk about the cyber attack that was conducted on North Korea, on Iran. Everybody is aware of the Stuxnet virus. The Stuxnet virus was engineered by Israel and US. Now, US routinely conducts cyber attacks across the world, and it steals data. It just goes unreported. You see, that this is the game. If you control the media, you control the narrative, right? You also tell people what is happening and what is perceived to be happening. So again, I do not agree with this viewpoint. And he goes on to say that we need to change our visa regime and all of the other immigration stuff, and nobody is interested in listening to that. And so if we start attacking the hospitals, we would be in breach of the Geneva Convention, cyber attacks. So basically crying horse over stuff which really doesn't ruffle anybody's feathers. I mean, there are routinely cyber attacks happening in US, and data is being, stolen, sometimes by as an inside job. So I don't know what is the whole, hoopla about. This entire narrative, this article needs to be completely destroyed, because they don't have a legitimate ground for arguing on this. Moscow blasted the hacking accusations as another orchestrated act of propaganda. See, of course, there is a propaganda war happening. It's not like Moscow doesn't spew out propaganda. They do. Who doesn't? But they have only been doing this in response to the West's propaganda, right? So before the West claims and say, oh, might is not right, right is might. Somewhere I read this statement here in this article, about right being might. Yeah, you can all be Gandhian in your approach, but that is when you are fighting a losing battle. So why don't you just admit, that the Russians have outmaneuvered you when it comes to propaganda? Just be humble about it. I mean, this is absolute BS. The US waded into the spat and claimed they have identified 7 suspected Russian officers. Maybe, may not be. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of this, but I will leave an article, leave the link to the article, which you can read further. But I would want to very briefly touch upon another article, which is related to the Syrian war, right? Why did the Syrian war happen? Why this hate mail against Russia? Is it over a silly gas pipeline that is currently fueling the world's conflict? Of course it is. So let's very quickly get into this. And I want to read verbatim here from the news.com.au. This article was published quite a while back, but it is still very relevant right now. So the Syrian war, experts have pointed out that many of the key players have one thing in common: a $1 billion gas pipeline. So this article talks about how Russia is a major supplier of gas to Europe, and they have pipelines going through the Middle East. And there was also a proposal of Qatar, who is also a big exporter of gas, to run a pipeline across Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and into Europe. So Russia has been accused of meddling here, saying that they have really blocked any effort to create a parallel supply line or pipeline for gas to Europe, and it has become a Russian monopoly. When I mean, come on, Syria is Russia's ally, so they're not going to give you an inch just because you asked, your pipelines to go underground. It's not going to happen. So let's read on, right? So many have questioned why Russia became involved in the Syrian war, but often overlook the fight over natural gas, right? So 80% of the gas, like I mentioned, that Russian state-controlled company Gazprom produces is sold to Europe. So that's what. So Europe doesn't like being reliant on Russia for fuel. So it's a love-hate relationship. So they keep demonizing Russia, but still keep buying gas from them. I mean, it's a pathetic situation, right? So just imagine, for a gas pipeline that Qatar wanted done over the territories of Syria, they have created a proxy army called ISIS and tried to depose Bashar al-Assad by demonizing him and his regime. And today, Syria lies in shambles, right? It's a heap of ruin, like the Bible says. So this is what it is. Russia has always used gas as an instrument of influence. The more you owe Gazprom, the more they think they can turn the screws. Yeah, it's all right for you to become an activist right now, demonizing Russia and all of these. What happened to Russia back in 1917 when there was a Russian revolution that happened on the ground, and the ruling, kingdom, or the kingship of the Tsar was deposed by the same people who rule the world right now? If I have to really go into depth, the Romanovs were deposed and the Russian Revolution set in, and this was engineered by the people in the West. They have sought to control Russia right from the early 1900s. So today, if Russia has a monopoly on business or gas, oh, it's such a bad thing. Oh, you little naughty country called Russia. No, they're not. They're just protecting their self-interest. Just because Russia protects its national interest doesn't mean it is bad. I'm sorry. All right, let's move on. So US also wants to use its own natural gas supply, but heck, they're years away before US can actually create any kind of supply line to ship to overseas. So what are they talking about here? So this is how they have been really spewing hate against Russia, and it's not called for. So again, the article goes on to say that there was another pipeline which Iran had proposed, and because Iran is an ally of Russia, was okay with creating such a pipeline, since Iran would be in control of such a pipeline. So obviously, the whole business and politics tends to merge here, and one can understand what really happened in Syria here. People were trying to really fight a political chess game and try to acquire this $1 billion gas business, which could turn the tide in their favor. So yeah, so I will also leave a link to this article as well. So it goes on to talk about the history of the conflict and how did this all began and all of that. So if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I am looking for subscribers, and it will be great. I promise I'll get you quality content every week. Please like and do share your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Even if you disagree with me, that's fine with me. We can always have a conversation. Thank you. Bye.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me.